Mankind has always been obsessed with this idea of intelligent beings being spread around the universe. But we never really shook hands with some alien and said, "Hello, nice to meet you," or made scientific confirmation of their names. That is, until today, in an ordinary city, lived a middle-aged man, somewhat a loner, and somewhat out of tune with society, which is John Miller, who turned all these equations upside down. What Miller did was so hard that the Earth, as well as the scientific aliens of the galaxy, were shaken to their very core by every kind of intellectual hierarchy that had been maintained with such great fervor and strength until then crashing down. It all began with John Miller's life, which seemed dim. He was once a bright physics student at university, in spirit brilliant, and a genius in mathematics at a young age. However, life didn't shape up as he had wished. Political games in academia, continuously depressing scholarships, and an unamazing career growth had led to his exile from university. After many setbacks, he turned into a man who spent his whole life repairing computers in a small patch of his suburb. It sounded like a simple job, but his brain was always surrounded by a complex equation or unsolved mystery. The fact is, Miller was always after a big problem. This was a big question that hundreds of years and innumerable civilizations spread all over the galaxy had been working at, but never solved. The finding of intelligent life forms out in space was discovered. Contacting them, however, wasn't as straightforward a process as galactic diplomacy. Their language of communication ran through mathematics and physics. Extraterrestrial beings solved an indefinite number of equations, theories, and logical reasonings, but the big question, the feeling which was cast onto the boundless space, looking to the depth of reality, and asking about the structure of the universe remained unsolved. The big question had long outweighed human intelligence. One day, however, an old academic paper changed life's course for Miller. Back in his small shop, a customer once brought in an old computer that he had found in his attic and, over time, he had completely forgotten about, containing a file which granted access to a database shared between humans and aliens. Unsolved equations, theories, hypotheses, even speculative ideas, epoch after epoch of these have filled up the database. One of the files caught John's eye: the definition of the so-called big question that stirs the whole scientific community. He stopped everything and did not take his eyes off the screen for even one moment. His eyes grew wide, and his mind was filled with a storm of thoughts. This problem that even advanced alien races living for millions of years hadn't solved began to take shape as a puzzle in front of John. That morning, the life of Miller was very normal, but it blossomed into an evening which had him really close to solving one great galactic puzzle. He combined the old programs he loaded onto his computer with his simple equations and theories, then created an even more bizarre algorithm. From an outsider's perspective, this man would most likely seem crazy. Miller took page after page of notes, set up equation after equation, and worked until dawn with thoughts interconnected in his mind like threads. He had closed his shop for 3 days, stopped answering the phone to disconnect with the outside world, and even forgot the important functions of eating and drinking. Now, his mind was focused upon solving one of the biggest mysteries in human history. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. One morning Miller reached, with all the equations and theories he had set up, the solution to that great problem which even the aliens hadn't solved. A slight miscalculation error. Either because of their pride or by the very nature of their highly advanced civilization, the aliens had managed to overlook just this. Miller, on his part, utilized the chaotic character, unsure of human thought, to his advantage. Sometimes the answers to the most complex questions are given through the creative and intuitive nature of human intelligence. Indeed, John Miller had done just that. He stared at the screen for some time, devoid of any idea as to what to do. The problem that the aliens had not solved in years was blinking on his screen. First of all, he thought that he was dreaming. Perhaps he was playing tricks with himself because he had been sleep-deprived for so long. Then, he reviewed again and again the solved equations. Everything fit. Math does not lie, right? It was not going to remain a galactic secret for very long. For several days, John Miller shared his discovery with no one. But the scientific community wasn't small enough to hold such a big discovery in secrecy. The The science communities of the world and the galaxy were shocked when other scientists who could access the database noticed this huge solution made in the system. The solution was like an alarm across the galaxy, bringing complete chaos within the academic circles. Alien races, with superior intelligences, were baffled as this problem that was solved by a human was a problem they themselves had never been able to solve in centuries. How could a world dweller, that lowly human, solve it? This could not be according to the order of the universe. Academic circles immediately stirred into action. Both human and alien scientists began testing the solution, verifying it, and comparing it to the equations that had been made beforehand. The truth could not be avoided. Miller's solution was correct. Not only was it correct, but was based on such a simple mistake that the problem, which had been unsolvable for centuries across every corner of the universe, almost seemed like child's play. The answer to the big question was a non-complex deficiency. When the news of Miller's success began to spread, the two worlds, academic and otherwise, were divided. One group recognized the genius of this extraordinary human and respected him. Another group came forward in opposition to the very idea that such a big problem could be solved with human intelligence. The scientists of the alien world could not digest the fact that a human had solved the problem. It was even embarrassing for the races more technologically advanced than humans how such a basic mistake was overlooked. After all, it wasn't just a scientific sensation that Miller had discovered, but also an event that turned upside down the galactic hierarchy. Until then, humans were recognized as no more than a second-grade species in the universe. They hadn't exactly left their mark on a universal scale by way of technological and scientific development. But now, a human and ordinary mechanic had resolved the universe's greatest mystery. This is going to turn upside down not only the scientific world, but also political and sociological balances. While the size of the echo his success had found in the universe was only now beginning to seize Miller's imagination, he still had no idea what he had been pulled into. Stories about him started headlining science magazines, blogs, and news sites from around the world. The governments, technology companies, and even religious authorities began voicing an opinion about the event, not just scientists. One day, the small-time mechanic John Miller woke up as the most famous man in the world. Unknown numbers called, his mailbox was full of letters, and journalists started waiting in front of his house. Miller tried to cope with life after it had quickly changed into a media circus, without understanding what was happening. But all this chaos was only part of the real problem he was deeply thinking about. Miller did not know, because the true danger lay in the fact that the solution to this equation was not just a scientific achievement. This solution, ringing out across the galaxy, had brought about the collapse of a hierarchy that for long had been unbalanced. But by the time this problem was solved, advanced alien civilizations were just beginning to experience a significant weakness in the balance of power. The real place of humanity in the galactic arena threatened the superiority maintained throughout history by these civilizations. Hence, not just academic discussion, but a big political crisis erupted after the solution presented by Miller. The first chaos came from the biggest scientific council at the center of the Galactic Council. The Xerians, who had settled in a galaxy unseen by anyone and had been leading the solution to this problem while working on the big question for years, thought that they were among the most advanced forms of intelligence in the universe. It was a very humiliating thing for the Xerians to accept his solution. This solution was reviewed by the council members, who were the most prestigious mathematicians and physicists of the universe. That was correct, but Miller's solution had struck deep into the root of their perceptions of their cultural and scientific superiority. So, instead of trying to take the solution from him, they decided to discredit it. They labeled Miller a faker. They made a secret agreement among themselves to manipulate the world into believing the solution was a hoax. However, all the Xerians did was merely their best in discrediting Miller. The mathematical truths included in the solved equation also unveiled some secrets that formed the basis of their technological advances. If it fell into the hands of less advanced races, especially, it could put in danger the position of galactic leadership occupied by the Xerians. They, therefore, prepared a dark plan to prevent the solution from spreading into the world. They attempted to hack into Miller's computer and delete the equations so that his discovery would leave no trace. Instead, they came upon something they hadn't bargained for: the quirky genius of one John Miller. Miller had sensed for a long time that chaos was suspiciously swirling around him. Since he found the solution, some movements in the digital world took place. There were incomprehensible data streams that entered his computer, sudden internet faults, and at night, software crashings. He realized that all those were not ordinary errors. Beyond all this, Miller had an instinct. From the moment he found the solution, someone was after him. This was just about the time when the Xerians were about to delete all of Miller's data. They chanced upon a few backup files he had transferred on a local storage device. Miller's digital judgments had spread his solution to many different points around the world. This data had gone through some flows in the dark corners of the web, underground networks for sciences, and secret hacker communities. Now, the solution of John Miller was no more in the hands of a single person, but under the control of the entire world. Now, things started moving out of the Xerians' grasp. Their plan, after all, now had turned into chaos, affecting not only the scientific world, but the whole galaxy. His acceptance in extraterrestrial scientific circles created a huge crisis across galaxies. This solution made other civilizations of space question the supremacy of the Xerians. Everything was collapsing at the same moment. The balance kept through years was demolished with this small discovery made by Miller on a computer screen. Earth academic circles did not remain indifferent to this big debate either. While lots of Earth scientists supported Miller's discovery, some realized how this solution could change galactic politics. This was not only a scientific achievement, but also an event that would lead to humanity's recognition in the intergalactic arena. Now human beings knew more, proving they had the capability to solve the mysteries of the galaxy. There came a huge change into political balances. Governments and political leaders began embracing Miller's discovery. Each wanted to gain his advantages from the event. Straight away, the American government put Miller in protection. The president in person provided Miller with a secret mission to lay out how humanity could most fully utilize this information before explaining the solution to extraterrestrial scientists. The task at hand was the beginning of a new era for humanity. However, everything was not so rosy for Miller himself. He was just a mechanic. Intricate diplomatic games and intergalactic political crises were not his thing. What he had found was a solution, yes, but he was skeptical for whom and for what purpose he had done it. This big power vacuum that suddenly emerged due to Miller's extraterrestrial solution was not only a political crisis, but triggered a civil war between different races in every corner of the universe. While it was a solution, advanced civilizations, which were frightened that other races would also gain strength with this solution, started to act in defense of their sovereignty. Especially, the Xerians were preparing their weapons not to share their technologies. On one hand, other civilizations were making great strides in science thanks to Miller's solution. On the other hand, intergalactic conflicts accelerated. The Earth did not seem to look very different either. Miller's discovery became a point in scientific as well as socio-political development for humankind. Countries ran the race against each other in acquiring this knowledge, while there was a diplomatic tension taking place among world governments. Many countries stated that such a great scientific breakthrough should not remain in the hands of just one group. Miller's solution was an opportunity for humanity, but at the same time, it was one of the reasons for war. During this period of time, Miller wanted to run away from everything. As he finally began to realize what kind of trouble he had created, it was like being lost in this madness. Aliens on one side, humans on the other, governments on another. John Miller had just solved one problem, but now the whole universe was rotating around his discovery. His quiet life had long ended. He couldn't help but ask himself, do I really want to do this? Great chaos, as the discovery observed by world governments and galactic politics, then spiraled completely out of control. People were not only rejoicing in a scientific victory, but were now fighting over this new knowledge and technology. America, the European Union, China, and Russia were all the major powers involved in diplomatic crises. Nobody wished to miss the advantages in possession of the solution by Miller. The alien civilizations even started forming alliances with the governments of the world. Each one hoped to use Miller's discovery in their favor to keep control over humans. The only thing Miller wished was to be free from the consequences of his discovery and to stay out of the chaos. But while Miller wished for a way out easily, the eyes of the world and the galaxy were on him. What originally seemed to be purely a scientific crisis rapidly developed into a power struggle. The Exerians, the most powerful military and political powers in the galaxy, finally acted against this development, which was seriously threatening their superiority. Having used diplomatic channels for quite some time and finding it impossible to stop the spread of Miller's solution, the government of Exerion applied the last option: invasion. In return, the Exerians made preparations for a sneak attack against Earth. The secret attack plans of the Exerians were not invasion, but to really decimate Miller and his solution. This is because, directly, his solution threatened their galactic dominion. If the humans could show their prowess in solving the deep mysteries of space, this may eventually lead other civilizations to unite against the Exerians. Thus, Miller's solution was not merely an academic discovery, but a battle in the survival of the Exerians. With tensions abruptly heightening on Earth, Miller tried to secretly free himself from the pressure of world governments and alien threats. But when he finally thought he was at the center of a world and galactic crisis, things got a little more complicated. He woke up one morning to find U.S. government security forces around his house and ships of the Exerion in the sky. There was no longer anywhere to run. John Miller felt the weight of his fate as his life had transformed from an ordinary mechanic to a figure who would determine the future of the universe. However, at this stage, things started to take a different turn of events. The moment the plans of Exerians came into limelight, the governments of the world, apart from the other alien civilizations, also joined hands to decide upon protecting Miller. For everybody knew that the solution that Miller could provide might someday change the fate of the universe. Because the Exerians' invasion plan had been exposed, world leaders and alien alliances almost went to war. The first time in human history, all nations on Earth united joined with the alien civilizations for one goal: to protect John Miller and his discovery. The protective network formed around Miller started to demolish with the extraterrestrial invasion. The technology of the Exerians was still too advanced against which any form of humanity could counter. But Miller's solution gave humans an advantage in this war. Miller's discovery not only explored the basic mathematical structure of space, but opened new avenues for technological breakthroughs as well. With this information, world governments took to Miller's algorithms to strengthen their defense systems and plan for a counterattack against the Exerians. At this juncture of life, when war was knocking at the door, Miller had a choice to make. After years of living as a lone mechanic, he found himself among the strongest minds in the universe. His solution was not just a scientific success, but it turned into a weapon also. That it had now become crystal clear that Miller actually faced a dilemma as to how he should use such power, only to save himself or liberate humanity and other races from the clutches of the Exerians. In the end, Miller made his choice. Combined with the defense systems developed during the attack of the Exerians, Miller's solution brought a new understanding of the main laws of the universe. Using the algorithms created by Miller, humans could resist the weaponry of the Exerians. The war was short but sharp. The Exerians, despite their technological superiority, had to face the innovations brought by Miller's discovery. A basic understanding of the structure of space was their biggest mistake. By the end of the war, the Exerians lost their galactic leadership. Earth was emerging as a new power in the intergalactic arena. John Miller was suddenly much more than a commoner and an ordinary person. He had turned into a savior of the human race and the pioneer of a new technological revolution. After all these victories, it begged the real question before Miller. What now? When the war finally subsided, and after this great change on Earth and throughout the galaxy, everything just came to a halt for some time. The civilizations of this galaxy started embracing the new status quo brought about by the findings presented by Miller. The Exerians were made to withdraw totally from galactic politics, while the rest of the civilizations also knew a different era had just begun. No longer were humans a part of a civilization, but became a power that could reach deep into the far regions of space and was able to solve problems intergalactically. However, John Miller was not the kind of man who could enjoy the peace after victory. After what happened, he just wanted to put some distance between himself and the world and the galaxies. All that madness he had gone through since the moment he found the solution had tired his soul so deeply. Even though he was a great hero for humanity, he wanted to remain an ordinary man. One day, in front of the governments and galactic representatives of the world, Miller was going to explain his discovery. The whole world was tuned in to hear him, but what Miller said was something no one had expected. "I'm just a mechanic. What I did was just notice a mistake. But everything that resulted from this mistake is your responsibility. The solution I found has opened new doors for you, but how you go through these doors is up to you. I'm gone now." With this speech, Miller vanished. Leaders of world and galaxy tried to show where he was, but John Miller had vanished. After all this chaos, he wanted to go back to the old life. Perhaps he would further live as a man unknown to anybody, maybe on top of a mountain, in some village, or in a distant corner of space. The legacy left behind by Miller turned the tide of fate for humanity, changing its galaxy. His discovery had made world civilization a galactic power, but Miller himself, far away from everything, chose to be living his own life. No one would know where he was, but his name would forever be among the mentions of the greatest scientific achievements of the universe. Thus, John Miller was an ordinary man at the beginning, but as a hero, left it to enter among the greatest heroes of the universe.